A major twist has shaken global trade discussions. What was expected to be a smooth step toward in the India-US trade talks has now hit pause, all because of a dramatic ruling by the US Supreme Court. Hello and Namskar. You're watching KATV India with me, Varsha Venugopal. Let's break down the India-US trade deal. The Indian government has decided to reschedule its trade team's visit to Washington, D.C. The team led by Chief Negotiator Darpan Jain was supposed to finalize the legal text of an interim trade framework with the United States. Meetings were planned ahead of U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer's visit to India to sign the agreement. But after the U.S. Supreme Court, often referred to as SCOTUS, struck down many of President Donald Trump's earlier tariff measures, uncertainty has grown. The court ruled 6-3 that the administration has gone beyond its authority by using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977 to impose sweeping tariffs. In simple words, the judge said the law being used did not give enough power to impose such broad import taxes. This ruling has created confusion across countries that were negotiating trade deals with the US. Soon after the verdict, Trump announced a new global tariff. First 10%, then raised to 15%, then using Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. He described it as a temporary import surge along with up to 150 days allowance to deal with the balance of payments issues. Now, here is where things become legally complicated. Prominent Indian-American lawyer Neil Katyal has raised serious legal concerns. He pointed out that the U.S. Department of Justice has earlier told the court that Section 122 does not clearly apply in this situation. According to Katyal, trade deficits and balance of payments deficits are conceptually different issues. In simple language, just because a country imports more than it exports does not automatically mean it has a balance of payments crisis. Katyal argued that if the president wants sweeping tariffs, he should convince the US Congress instead of relying on executive powers. He said if tariffs are truly a good idea, it should not be difficult to persuade lawmakers. Meanwhile, the Indian government is carefully studying the impact of these sudden changes. Officials say both countries agreed that it would be wiser to evaluate the implications before continuing high-level talks. There are also quite indications within certain government circles that this legal uncertainty might offer India some elbow room to negotiate better terms. Globally, reactions have been cautious. Malaysia and Indonesia, which had finalized tariff agreements with the US, clarified that nothing has been formally notified yet. South Korea, according to reports, suggested that the court's rejection of Trump's earlier tariffs may have nullified its own 15% reciprocal tariff deal with Washington. At the same time, the European Commission demanded that the US stick to the terms of last year's EU-US trade deal after new levies were announced. Despite all these, Trump has said that the deal with India is still on. But uncertainty remains high. Under Section 122, all countries have now been placed at the same 15% tariff level, at least for 150 days. However, US officials have hinted that countries may still have to negotiate individual terms. There is also mention of another powerful tool, Section 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930, which allows tariff up to 15% on countries that are seen as unfairly discriminating against US trade. These are serious possibilities and the Indian government is examining them closely. There's also concern about whether sectors like pharmaceuticals could face action under Section 232, which relates to national security. Back home, exporters are tense. Frequent changes in tariffs mean companies must constantly recalculate costs, renegotiate contracts, and adjust supply chains. Industry leaders say such unpredictability makes long-term planning extremely difficult. Markets are expected to remain volatile this week as investors react to shifting trade policies and legal uncertainties. So, where does this leave India? For now, the trade team's visit is on hold. Legal analysis is underway. Strategic and economic impacts are being reviewed. And while the broad framework of the India-US trade deal reflects understanding between the two sides, it is not yet a binding commitment. In short, the door to the deal is still open, but the path has become more complex. This entire episode highlights how legal rulings in one country can immediately affect global trade, diplomacy, markets, and businesses worldwide. The big question now is, will this tariff turbulence become an opportunity for India to seek better terms, or will prolonged uncertainty delay progress? Thank you for watching KATV India. This is me, Varsha Venugopal, signing off.